Get ready for an exhilarating journey with Insight into Insight, All Things Society. Brought to you by Intelligent Office, Nashville Downtown, the virtual office revolutionizing business success. I'm your host, Lord Danavan Hilton, International Business Advisor and co-mastermind of Hilton Elite Marketing Agency, a growing sales and marketing consulting firm promoting brands in urban areas of the United States to increase their customer base and community presence. Join me as we dive into the world of influential business moguls, civic leaders, and community icons. Get your pens and papers ready as we explore the juiciest, most sensitive topics that ignite curiosity and fuel ambition. It's time for you to position yourself for unparalleled success. Don't miss the incredible opportunities at Intelligent Office, Nashville Downtown, your key to flexible workspaces and virtual business support. Reach out today at 615-928-1900 or visit 315 Dedrick Street, Suite 1550, Nashville, Tennessee 37238. Together, we're shaping a bold, dynamic future. Let's uncover the issues and empower success. Now, it's time for Insight into Insight, All Things Societal. Let's get started. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thank you for tuning in. It's your friend Danavan Hilton, bringing you anything that's going to help develop you, help you grow, inspire you, stimulate your mind, anything based on that in business, community, and civic relations. That's what I'm here to do, and I'm honored to have a special guest with me today because a lot of you all who are following my story or looking at my work in the past and, gravitating to what I do, this individual here joining me today has been really essential in the implementation. There's been a strong foundation. I want to shout out my personal family for helping me become the man I am today. But as you go through life, you run into people based on your foundation that will invest in you if they see you investing in yourself, or just may resonate with you, or you resonate with them just based on your attitude. And so I want to shout out my foundation. And in saying that, Professor Kanji McClellan, who is joining me today, I call him Professor because and we'll jump into that shortly, but Professor is someone that has taken me from the foundation into at the minimum, first phases of becoming someone that identified value in themselves or recognizing their skills, and more so putting me in a position to be able to, help express and promote what I do and take me to different levels in so many ways. So I look forward to that conversation. I said to say, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have a strong network, a strong body of individuals, like-minded individuals that can push you, hold you accountable, motivate you based on what they're doing, based on what they're modeling, and even going as far as being a mentor, then that is going to be something I want you to focus on, because it's the best team that wins. And this is someone that has poured into me, my wife, my boys for over 10 years. And I definitely look forward to just seeing what this conversation looks like. I just want to make sure everyone knows the magnitude and the impact of what's going on here. And I have a certain number of people that, I would call advisors, or someone that I'm reaching out to for consultation and insight, access and resources. And this is someone that I definitely do that with and will continue to as long as, grace allows. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me and having my friend, my brother, my associate, my colleague, mentor, advisor, Kalonji McCullen on the show. I call this gentleman Professor. Professor, thank you for joining us and giving us a moment of your time.
You're welcome. You're welcome. As I always call you Senator because I see great things in you. And as I said before, I see you in the world of politics eventually.
Mm.
And in the House, and one of the sides, whether it's Congress or the House of Representatives, one of the two. I see you up there.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. Definitely stand in agreement. And Professor has been calling me Senator as long as I can remember, as far as even before, when I'm in the world of civics. And if you do some research and go to my YouTube channel, vote for Donovan Hilton. So that's vote and the numerical number 4, Donovan Hilton. You'll be able to see my civics journey when I ran for city council, for city council years ago in a municipality, and to where I am today, where I would call myself a statesman or statesperson in that regard. And that's definitely where it's a journey. So follow that journey, but you'll see where Professor has been calling me senator since day one, and just really pushing and advocating for me to express that, and doing great work in the world of civics. And if you don't mind, we have a bunch of questions. We have a bunch of questions are questions and things I want to bring up with you, Professor. But if you don't mind, can you let the folks know, if you can remember as best you can, how we first connected?
It was through, it was like an event. I can't remember the gentleman who coordinated it, but I think it had to deal with business or taxes or something like that. It was you and the gentleman, I believe he was involved in taxes and stuff like that. And we briefly talked and things of that nature. Then, of course, later on, we connected again uh, at Claire Muhammad School. You just happened to be there. And I'm not really quite sure how that happened. But yeah, I distinctly remember that we initially crossed paths at this certain event, and I know it was either about business or taxes or something of that nature. And then, of course, we kind of crossed paths again. And you were Claire Muhammad School, and so we just started to talk, and it just kind of went from there.
Absolutely, and we're definitely jumping to those areas there. And I remember at the time, I want to say you were a professor at Tennessee State University, with a focus in the Department of Africana Studies, which I thought was so unique, especially coming from the West Coast and moving to the Southeast and getting more into my history, uh, and and Black America, if you will, and just getting more into the African diaspora side. I really respectfully, I didn't really, and ironically, for those that don't know, I'm half Jamaican. My father was born and raised in Jamaica, so there's a Caribbean background, and dealing with Africana studies and African diaspora. It's vast, and these are things that I was not aware of, and respectfully, no one's fault, but. And when I met Professor, and especially saying, hey, I'm in Africana Studies at Tennessee State University, historically Black college university, originally at that time, all that was mind blowing. And so, if you don't mind, Professor, do you mind jumping into a little bit about your background, as far as where you started? And if you don't mind, where you are, because we definitely want to make sure that people are connecting with you, because I want to make sure people are aware of the great work that you're doing.
Most definitely, most definitely. Like as well as I do. I did 20 years in the military. Did three different branches: Navy, Army, and Air Force. I initially came to Nashville because my wife was living there. I was apprehensive about going to Nashville because I didn't know there was black folks there. All I knew was hee haw. I came to Nashville. They had three HBCUs, and initially, what put me on my track was that I started off in working with nonprofits, specifically Room in the Inn,
Mm-hmm.
and started off there. Eventually, I kind of matriculated a little bit. I started off with nonprofits, eventually gravitated towards metropolitan MNPS, Nashville's public school as a truancy officer. But all that time is that what kept drawing me is that I just found myself constantly working with what is deemed as at-risk population, or those who were on the lower rung of the socioeconomic ladder. Eventually, I found myself at Tennessee State University because originally I was going to start my own nonprofit, working with at-risk kids, and it just didn't work out. It just life is life, and it just so happened that I just found myself at Tennessee State University at one point, and late Dr. Yefru decided to, he basically asked me if I wanted to teach it. And during this time frame, I was working on a PhD, and again, that fell through. But life is life. I had some family emergencies came up, and I just had to divert my interest in that. And for about 6 years, 4 or 5 years, I taught in Africana Studies. I did psychological impact of colonization, the Great Debate, I did the African Male, Intro to Africana Studies. But also during that track, the senator also was very instrumental in regards to helping me do community events based around the, based around the various projects I had my students doing, as well as, later on, I did a fellowship at Vanderbilt University again. Because one of my superpowers is I'm able to look at information and data of nonprofits, and for whatever reason, I'm not quite sure what it is. I can just kind of tell the what kind of foundation, whether it's good or bad, and whether it's worthy to invest in it. After that, what really got me on my path after that is that it opened opportunity for me to be a librarian in a prison, and then eventually I transferred into vocational, and I did that with Core Civic, which was for profit, and that closed, and I switched over to the sheriff department. And as life went on, I eventually found myself back in corrections because I relocated down to Florida. And again, I am teaching career development skills for the Department of Corrections of Florida, but eventually it would be July 14th. I'll be going Operation New Hope, which will give me more leverage to actually work with individuals upon release. And that way I can have more of a direct impact and help cut down on recidivism. On top of that, I'm also a photographer. I've been part of some exhibits. Most recently, I've got an exhibit coming up in September, and that will be a contemporary interpretation of what influenced me. Basically, the underlying theme is strong women, because that has been like the people in my life who kind of guide me on my trajectory. So that is coming up, and then next year I am going to be putting together a comic book, a horror anthology. I got the script. I just got to put it together. And 2027, my dream is to put together, a blurred Black Nerd comic book convention during Black History Month. That's my goal in 2027. But right now, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. There's a lot more, but we'll be on here for 24 hours if I give you the whole lay of the land. But at the underlying of the DNA, especially when I was doing things in Nashville, the great senator over here, he's been instrumental as far as helping me out. He's even provided internship for one of my kids, and he was very instrumental in that as well. So yeah, very so the senator has also been very interwoven in the DNA of everything I've done.
Wow. And vice versa. And this is why it's so important that, especially, and I want to talk to, um, I don't know, it's just like the professor said, respectfully, we just find ourselves in areas where we're serving, at risk, youth in that population. And there's so much talent, so much opportunity, and so much, space for the, especially the males. I really want to see them, thrive and be great with family and be a compliment to their neighbors and be in a position where they can sustain themselves. And so the senator helped me to really introduce myself to, a at risk, I don't want to say culture, but just the at risk. How would you say that? If that makes sense, Professor. But I don't know if there's a political
Uh,
correct way to say
just
that.
yeah, I just say people who haven't really recognized their potential yet. Um, for various reasons. It's just it's just classical conditioning. A lot of times people have been conditioned to not believe in themselves, or for whatever reason, they just don't really see, they don't know it, they don't have the right tool set for self actualization, to achieve that, um, to even strive for their goals. And, a lot of times in those communities, it's a lot of times kids just by osmosis absorb a self-defeatist nature. Either the school is underfunded, or certain people may uh, constantly tell the kids, tell them when they're young that they're not going to be anything, not directly, but indirectly, by saying that they have limited potentials and this is why they can't do it. And eventually they'll start so internalizing this, and they just won't go forward. I've
Mm,
seen it working in correction, working with these young men. A lot of times, when I talk to them, the first thing they would say is that, they would be self-effacing. They would just start talking about how, they were in slow classes, or they're stupid, or they're not this, or they're not that. Um, and it's just a matter of getting them to believe in themselves and getting them to recalibrate the compass so they can find their true north. So what I usually just say is that for a lot of these individuals, it's just that somebody put proverbial butter on the rung of life, and
mm,
and nobody's giving them the proper tools to kind of wipe off all that slippery stuff so they can actually ascend to their higher self.
mm. And I'm going to say this, and maybe that's why I just speaking this now that I think we've known each other for 10 plus years. Maybe, I think I was in my early 20s. I'm almost 40 now. And so I've gone through a lot of life. And now that I look back, I think that's why now that I'm listening to you, I resonated with you, or gravitated to you, because I was one of those young men that you helped wipe off. And even though I was pretty polished, there were some areas that you indirectly was like, hey, and did in a way that wasn't that I bought into and built me up. And so when you introduced me, you and a few other brothers really introduced me to a community that really has not recognized their potential. I don't know how else, to a community and just being introduced to that world. And I do remember even the Great Debate. That was one of the first projects that I was able to help you on, and myself didn't know about, respectfully, W.E.B. Du Bois and oh gosh, don't tell me, please.
Oh, Booker T. Washington.
Booker T. Washington, forgive me, Booker T. Washington, and doing research on them heavy at that time at Fisk University. So Professor was at several HBCUs in that area working heavily, really trying to help people recognize the potential in themselves and to recondition or reprogram themselves to where they were able to believe in themselves. I mean, and so I was one of those individuals, and it was an honor and actually an opportunity for me to be a part of those community projects and to help promote and make phone calls and just be there to help the professor as he basically put all this together, And so from that, I was able to get a lot of experience, obviously build a strong a working relationship with someone that could help me go to new heights, like you said, wipe that stuff off so you can extend and get up there. And I really am a product of that. And to make it even more just humbling, the professor, once I got to a certain area and I'm doing all these things, and this and that, the professor knows, and he called me up and said, hey, my son is just finishing his first year at, if you don't mind me saying,
No, no, mind.
Tennessee, Knoxville, finishing his first year, and he's coming back home, and I want to make sure that he's staying busy, and I want him to, if it's okay with you, to intern with you. And this is at this point, I just started my consulting business. It's going, it's getting off the ground, and I'm really just figuring out, my services and how I'm doing it. And the professor is always giving me good nuggets. And so when he called me with this, I said I would be unwise to not, take advantage or use this opportunity. And you're very sharp young man. One of Professor's sons was able to join me for a summer and help me grow as an individual, and brought a lot to the table, and also put me in a position to be a mentor myself. And so that's why, again, it's very important to make sure you're looking at who your network is and who you call, your friends. Because one thing we didn't get a chance to do yet, and you mentioned earlier, you were on your way to getting your doctoral degree, and you had to take care of business with your family. And when we first connected at the time, I think I had just got married. I was in that verge of, I was, my twins were, you knew the twins, they were still in strollers, newborns,
Mm-hmm.
they're almost going to high school now, and so not to get too much off track, just, so anyway, bringing it back to just looking at all those things, and then, me becoming a family man and watching the way that you move to this day as a family man, and really modeling in conjunction with the service to the community and doing it in a way where you can make money as well. It's a complete package, and so I'm just honored. And I really want to make sure, again, this is really just a promotion, a highlight of just, if you want to see what greatness looks like and you say, oh, Donovan's doing great things, this is the reason. These are some of the huge reasons why it happens. And I want to just stimulate your mind to say, well, you know what? If I don't have someone that I can connect with and build with and help me along the way and help wipe me off, then, I need to start looking into that. And we're going to talk about being family, being a family man, a husband, father shortly, if you don't mind.
Don't
And
mind.
and even in that, I want to also shout out Claire Muhammad Schools, how we originally connected for a second time, and that was a unique experience for me because I did happen to be there, and I was just actually there, just discovering, if I could say it, discovering. And I had never really been to a mosque, and I never really, or just into that, that space, respectfully. And the people, just have the biggest hearts, that for me, that resonated. And, I come from a different faith-based background. If you don't mind me jumping into this,
No,
Professor,
don't mind.
and because everything is so diverse. Everything is so diverse. And Professor calls me senator, but I say that because in my experience, it's a fine line you have to walk. you know. So you call me senator, but in that lifestyle, it's a fine line. And that's why I appreciate the professor, because he knows the line, he recognizes the line, realizes that line is there, and wants to be someone to help unite that line and bring it together and help be a bridge to that thin line. So he's taught me so much. But again, the Claire Muhammad School, the community, I really want to shout them out. And if you don't mind, again, I was discovering and gravitating and learning and getting some perspective. And I want to shout out Claire Muhammad. Do you have anything that you would like to mention, or anything that comes to mind as far as Claire Muhammad, that space there, and especially just dealing with, and as we're talking about, there's really no big theme here, but again, as a male, young male, or emerging leader, Black male, this is just something that, African American male, however you want to, there's so many different words, but this space is so important, again, to be able to recognize the potential in yourself. I think that's the thing. I think we're going to go with at the minimum here. And Claire Muhammad played a role in that for me. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to speak on or share, and just give thoughts on that.
No, I mean it was a good foundation. Like you said, people had good hearts, and it was just a unique gym in Nashville. They provided a safe space for a lot of Black and brown folk. As you know as well, is that they had a school, but they also had the mosque.
Mm-hmm.
They also had a nice little area where people can come and dine and fellowship.
Yep.
The people there, like you said, like I can reiterate over and over again, just had overwhelming large hearts that really worked out in the community, and they were definitely intertwined with the community, even though um, they were a unique entity in a pool full of Southern Baptists. But regardless of the fact, uh, they were able, like I said, they've been in the community since, I would say, for probably over 50 years. So they actually had a foundation already built, and they were just, did a lot of good things in the community, provided a lot of good things for the community, provided a lot of safe spaces for the community.
Absolutely. And for those that don't know, just to give you, again, me being a product of this environment, and really being a product of this network, to Professor's point, safe space, 100%. That's what I felt, and that's what I saw. All kind of people coming down and interacting and engaging for several reasons, and deeply intertwined in the community. So much respect around the city and county of Nashville. And to be honest, professors calling me senator, but it was a member of the Claire Muhammad School that said, "Hey, Danavan, a campaign is, the current council member is an incumbent. He's termed out, and you've been doing the work. And I think you'll be great to run for city council." And this individual from Claire Muhammad actually became my campaign manager and helped take, what I do in the civics to a new level. And we all work together, and so it's ironic that respectfully the professor is calling me senator, but at the same time, it was also that safe space that helped nourish me and get to a point, where I am today. And so it's a beautiful thing to see, how everything, just works together and bringing it back to, again, I just want to reiterate, you want to recognize the potential in yourself, get out there. And so again, Professor and I met at a community event dealing with business, taxes. I may not have knew anything about it, but I wanted to get out there and make sure I was engaged. There's so many places I could have been. And I said, you know what? This is a place that I can go to for me to get better. And if I had not have done that, I wouldn't have met the professor. So what I'm saying is, yes, oh, I can't find nobody, or there's limitations. I get that part. But we still have to be able to act and move and get out there, because we don't know what's going to, when we plant those seeds, we don't know what's going to harvest. And this is something that, and I would just, with the professor's background, and, I really would lean on him and his insight, especially when it comes to, civics. He's very, very sharp, very sharp. And so, again, the biggest thing I want all of us to do is to be able to tap in with the professor. If you're in the Nashville area, if you're in the Florida area, those two places, especially if you are on the West Coast, we want to make sure, things are virtual. Professor can connect with you online, can talk with you, can run a workshop, can do a lot of different things, And so if you don't mind, Professor, is there a way where folks can connect with you before we continue on, can connect with you through email if they want to, work with you or get some insight?
Yeah, you can connect with me. It's on kalonjimcclellan@gmail.com. I'm sure that you could probably share that with the folks when you post this.
Mm-hmm. Sure will. And also, before I forget, I want to thank you for your service as well. And that's coming from all the viewers. And so I know you have a unique perspective and you've seen a lot of things. And like I said, I appreciate you. And I want to make sure that the listeners are making sure that they are connecting with you and or sharing your information with their network so that there's an opportunity to get things done, because Professor is definitely a asset to anyone's table at the end of the day. And so, Professor, moving on, workforce development, if you don't mind me talking about that real quick, workforce development and respectfully working with the youth in the community, and to the point of respectfully corrections. Is there anything that we're going to jump into, we're going to switch gears and a little bit into family, and then we're going to switch gears a little bit to where you are now and some of the stuff that you have planned to include going into 2027. But is there anything dealing with workforce development as broad, as well as youth and education, that we can chew on or think about, or even give someone a reason to make sure they reach out to you when it comes to, that at-risk space, the youth, where they, in the community, all the way to a point where, they're in corrections, and not only their mindset, where they are at that time, but also maybe the mindset of society. Is there it's a broad question, but is there anything that you can just put together for us to think about and to take with us, and maybe we can elaborate on or look into in the future, dealing with that pipeline in the community to corrections?
Yeah, it's there is there is a disconnect within the community. Uh, you know, and I always say that the three biggest hindrance to the community in itself. There's three elements, and not being crass, but I call them pimp of poverty,
Mm,
uh, the pimp in the pulpit,
mm,
and coffee shop revolutionaries.
mm.
Those are the three elements right there. They're doing biggest harm. And what I say by that is you have those uh, politicians who thrive off of chaos.
Mm,
A lot of times you see incumbents, a lot of times, as I do, who they don't really necessarily try to look for a solution. Instead, they just uh, create more chaos. And don't get me wrong, there are some inequities in the community, but um, you do have certain politicians who sit there, and instead of actually looking for solutions, they create an illusion of them not being able to do something.
mm,
But in fact, when you look, you see them more or less lining their pockets.
mm,
And again, when I say those in the pulpit, you do have some churches that do some good work, but unfortunately, you have a disproportionate amount of them who, again, they will take your money, but then they don't really reinvest in the community, because all churches are a viable nonprofit business.
mm,
They're tax exempt. They have so much, and because of the way they are designed, they can technically move in worlds
mm,
that you or I may not be privy to just because of their title. And also in these churches, you have various, people and professions, but a lot of times, those churches that are in the inner city are in those, in at-risk communities. You have those individuals. You do have people of the congregation, but they don't contribute. They show up there, they go, they do whatever, and then they leave real quick. The only time when they really want to do anything is to feel good is around the holidays, Christmas usually. And the coffee shop revolutionaries are just those people who, they sound good, they speak good, but when it comes time to put skin in the game, they come up with some other excuse. But all three elements come together to form the perfect storm that really creates chaos. And unfortunately, they speak the loudest unfortunately, the loudest usually get the most attention.
mm,
And usually the people that get the most attention kind of gravitates toward that. um, but the thing about it is that in order to really, you know, get rid of, kind of work with that um, pipeline, it's really that it's almost preventative medicine. You really got to work with these kids.
mm,
They really talk with them, really do certain programs. Because right now, a lot of programs, a lot of schools, they don't have after school programs. They don't have those. When I was in school, you can be an athlete and then you can be in the theater and you can do uh, journalism all under one roof. Now they split it apart,
mm,
and those certain elements are more in communities where the zip code, the dollar signs kind of increase.
mm,
Um, so it's like investing and giving back to the community. In regards to, again, I hear a lot of folks talk about recidivism and want to do things. But when I was in Nashville working in corrections, it never failed. When a lot of these gentlemen were released, all the same people who said we got to do things for the community, they were nowhere around providing these certain resources. And unfortunately, those people fall in the same trappings. There is nobody actually pushing to regulate halfway houses, because you and I can open up a halfway house and have a 4 bedroom and house and stick 6 bunk beds in there and call it sunny side halfway house
mhm,
and charge each individual $250. Don't really care what they do. They just can just pay us our money. There's
mm,
nobody regulating that. So to sum it all up, it's just really just being committed and getting into being involved. Uh, I mean, right now I work with a lot of individuals, um, and it's a lot of angry young men who don't really know how to emote.
mm,
Again, a lot of them have a lot of issues built up. Their attic is kind of cluttered, and nobody's bothered to go in the attic and declutter it.
mm,
And it's one of those things of really sitting and working with them, because that's why you have these kids going from 0 to 100 a lot of times and taking the nuclear option, instead of processing those emotions. uh, we need to start looking into that and trying to start investing in some ways to kind of let kids being able to emote, kids being kids, kids being able to express themselves. You know, if there's no problem about crying. With this being June, this is the mental health month. A lot of people don't realize that, especially for young men, we've been conditioned to not emote, and unfortunately, we have a lot of pent up issues a lot of times. And so, if we can't fellowship with one another, that's why there's a lot of issues going on with health, because stress kills you, kills you a lot quicker. Um, that's why you have young men who don't know how to settle the disputes. They wind up going for the trigger before they can just talk it out. So yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of just involving yourselves in these issues. You don't necessarily have to be the patron saint. It can just be a ripple in the water. That one individual, you might, you know, big brothers and big sisters, or it can be volunteering at a whatever. But just always constantly remembering that those kind words could just click a light switch. And I hear it over and over again when I work in corrections, where they say these people are, these inmates are X, Y, and Z, and I have to explain to them that if all you know is chaos all your life, chaos becomes normal.
Mm.
And what's normal to, and it's just one of those things, classical condition. uh and it's one of those things of kind of getting them out of that situation and having them kind of look a bird's eye down and kind of seeing a lot of the chaos, kind of an out of body experience, so to speak, when you can look outside yourself and kind of look around and see what's going on. But if all you know is chaos, it just is what it is. And a lot of people don't understand it. And a lot of times their drug of choice is chaos. A lot of times they go back to doing what they're doing because that was their high. And it's just trying to find an alternative means to divert that energy and kind of show their worth, because there's a lot of individuals are coming out of jail with a lot of potential, some with a lot of good certifications. But unfortunately, when they get out, the doors are usually closed. And it just takes people to like uh, reach out and know and pull them up, and kind of show them the way. Because, like I said, one kind word, you don't have to like try to change 100 people. It can just be that one person. That one person can change 3 people, and it could just snowball from there.
And well said. Definitely resonates with me, and I'm hoping it's resonating with you as a listener. This is the primary reason I wanted to bring on my great friend, Professor, to the show, to see who would like to, especially if you're in those realms of career development, of anything dealing with sustainable a lifestyle. That could be in civics, if you're an elected official or a government agency, bureaucracy of some kind, and you know that there is a challenge there and you need some insight. You need some insight, you need some experience, some know-how, and you're following Danavan Hilton. I'm telling you right now, respectfully, to connect with Professor, dealing, if you're in education, you're in the nonprofit space, if you yourself respectfully are a church and you're saying, hey, you know what, we do need to get better. We do need some, and we do have these resources. This is someone that you definitely want to connect with. And what the professor is talking about resonates with me. And that's just giving, especially the youth, an opportunity to truly be the best they can be for themselves and others. I mean, there's a huge gap there, not huge gap, but there's a gap there. And we can always continue to work together and get better. And so definitely leave your comments. Anyone who's listening, watching, thoughts, leave your comments. You don't have to be just for me. If you have a comment for the professor, leave it there. And I know he'll get back with you. And maybe we can make this a monthly thing or something. I don't know, but let's see what this looks like. So make sure you leave your comment. And especially when it comes to sustainability and thriving for, that highest standard of lifestyle. I want to jump into a little bit about being a husband and jumping into fatherhood in that space, and especially for the young men out there that may not be aware of all that goes into this. 'Cause I think that's a huge part, not only in the community, but just when you're dealing with community families, neighborhoods, those play a role. And I want to jump into that. And if you don't mind, I want to start off here. And I want to shout out the missus. Beautiful thing is both of our wives have a great relationship, and it makes it easy for the both of us to be able to do our thing, both as a group or just as us individual working on projects, because it's like-minded individuals. Our children work together, we're family. And so I want to jump right into that a little bit. And, I want to shout out the missus, first of all. And, really, if you have just words of wisdom, very broad, but just words of wisdom that just come to your mind immediately when it comes to, for young men especially, maybe even those that maybe respectfully going in and out of incarceration, they're not even thinking about that. But, they mess, and they're looking at maybe not realizing right now that family and being a father or a husband is even essential. But when it comes to being a husband, what are some of the things that young men especially need to just keep in mind and keep in the back of their mind as they're going through life?
The ability to listen, to be, the main thing is to listen. Um, that's the main thing right there, as well as the ability to even admit wrong at fault. Um, and then again, as well as figure out a way to disagree. And disagree don't mean have to be an argument. It can just be, you want to go left, I want to go right. It doesn't have to escalate into World War III.
Mm,
I've been married for, it'll be 24 years. Yeah, I've been 24 years in December. It'll be 24 years. And that's just pretty much what we do. Just kind of just understanding that, yes, we are married, but also we also have our own separate interests, and we don't have to necessarily be tethered to one another. At the core of it, just listen and being flexible, and just
mm,
understanding that, yes, you're two pillars, but also you're individuals, and that's what makes y'all unique.
mm,
Um, and as far as fatherhood is concerned, um, especially those gentlemen who are have a colorful life, you know, you all, the one thing that will be striking is that folks don't realize your kids know what you're doing, no matter
mm,
how much you're trying to hide it. They're peeping. It looks like, you're doing good, in that lifestyle, when in fact, there's a lot of other elements that are involved, possible, the cemetery, incarceration, things of that nature. And kids can see that and they say, "Oh, dad's having fun. I see him out doing whatever." And it's the most telling thing when, one, you have to bury your son because he's trying to emulate you, or two, you look up and it's a family reunion,
mm,
and you have your kids in there with you in the jail cell.
mm,
And that's the one thing right there, folks. People have to realize when it comes to that, because one of the most gangster things you can ever do is taking care of your family. It's not hanging out on the, it's not hanging out in the gentleman's club and wasting your money, or putting money into a car, things like that. Most gangster thing you can be doing is like putting together a dollhouse for your daughter. That's what gangsterism is taking care of your community.
mm,
That's why they call the when they refer to, I mean, grant, yeah, the mafia, everybody want to love that, but it's all about family,
mm,
and taking care of family. And that's the thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people who do those things, critical thinking, the who, what, when, why. You want to know why you're doing it, and you want to always have an exit strategy, no matter what kind of project you're doing. Um, and that's the same thing when it comes to taking care of your kids. You want to make sure that you want to invest everything you can. And the end goal is to make sure that they're better than you. The same when you involve yourself with a relationship. The end goal is that you grow old and, expire together, and you build together and you grow, because you're both two companies and merging. And, when two companies merge, you want to increase your capital.
mm,
So those are some things right there just to think about.
mm. And that is well said. And everything that you are bringing up is a choice that we make daily. I would say, and first of all, just you mentioned listening. That's a skill, ladies and gentlemen. So, so if you feel like you are a good listener, I don't know. Maybe I could put a link up to something where we can look at your listening skills to kind of see where you are. I don't know if there's something of that we can generate, but I'll check and see. But ultimately, listening is a skill, and that's a choice that we have to do, that we have to commit to really, and sometimes just to listen, so someone respectfully, your partner can just be able to share their thoughts. It doesn't have to necessarily be a solution, but just sharing their thoughts and being able to allow someone to speak. That's something that we, as an individual, as a male, especially if you're a young male, have to sacrifice. If you're saying, "Oh, I don't want to listen. I'm feeling this way, and I should feel that," they should, bend to what I'm saying or be flexible to what I'm saying. If you're looking to, as Professor said, expire together, you really have to be, again, your two pillars. You want your pillar respected, and to be able to grow and get better, whatever it looks like. And this exact opposite, or the other pillar wants to do the same thing, not only as an individual, but also together, and that's the whole thing. So even going down to admitting that you're wrong, let's just take that in. If you're a young adult, and this is not something just only with your spouse, your partner, but this is relationships ultimately, and I think that the professor and I would probably continue to have a stronger relationship if we're great now and I did something that may not be the best fit, and I'm saying, hey, you know what, professor, that's my bad. I didn't realize, or and it may take time, but admitting something, that I was wrong, at least shows humility and respect to someone else. And it may, for those that may not be aware, and it may not seem doable, but disagreeing without arguing. It is possible. And I think Professor mentioned it earlier, going from 0 to 100. And what was the words he used? The nuclear option. We don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. So these are things that if you're a young male, respectfully, and hopefully that's the whole point of a father, is being able to help prepare and mold those emotional, intelligent skills that we as fathers have to have in the first place to be able to even model those things. So again, for someone to give you something that really could be a foundation to a lot of the relationship, listening, being accountable, admitting when you're wrong, and having a conversation where you can disagree and still work together, those go a long way in bringing it into fatherhood, because the children are watching, and they're like the professor said, they see what you're doing. They know what you're doing. They may know what you're going through. And so we're always modeling. And again, like the professor said, the end goal is to make sure that your children are better than you. And so in order for that to happen, we have to be able to become good listeners so we can model that. We have to be able to admit when we're wrong so we can model that. We have to be able to disagree without arguing so we can model that, so that the child can be as creative and expressive as they are now, can look at someone that they can model and use innovation to become better, and have a different perspective. So it's again, as we segue into the future, I want us as young adults, or I want young adults to be able to keep these things in mind. I know this might be left field to some in our podcast, this conversation, but again, I want us all to be able to get some good fruit while it's on the tree right now, y'all. And so the professor is here, and these are gems that he has dropped with me almost regularly for years, and again, the whole point of this podcast is to be able to open you up to my world and be able to get the information that I'm getting, because this is the information that not only was told to me verbally by the professor, but it was modeled before, during, and after our interactions on a daily basis, even dealing with our families. And, we had dinners and our families connected. I'm watching, how do we do this? The professor's so smooth, just making it happen, so it's good to always have that model. And so again, if you are, dealing with, family building, relationship building, soft skills, things in that nature, behavior therapy, if you will, just applied behavior analysis. I'm gonna just throw it out. Just throw it out. These are things in the realms that the professor is in and very experienced in. So make sure you reach out, and I'll put that email address in the description as well as in the video as well. And so, Professor, as we get ready to jump into where you are, what you're working on, and what's coming up in the future, is there anything that's on your mind that you want to throw out, or something we may have missed before we go into our last segment?
Not much. I mean, we pretty much covered all bases. The only thing I would emphasize is for the fathers, just remember, your daughters marry their father.
Mm,
So if you're out there wilding out, just don't be surprised uh, if they gravitates towards certain elements that you may not approve of.
mm,
You
mm,
know, and I've seen it a lot of times. And so it's just be mindful of that.
mm,
You know, and that's one of those things.
mm. I, I 100% received. I know the listeners 100% received. And I'll say this, and I'm not sure if it complements what the professor is saying, but when the professor says that, respectfully, I think of my wife's father and the relationship that they have, and the role that I can clearly see that my wife's father plays and has played in her life. And I do respect, what the professor is saying in that, and it does reflect respectfully. And I'm not speaking. That's all I know, but I want to shout out my father-in-law, did an outstanding job, and it's to the point where I know I have to come correct, not only to my wife but to my father, because they built that foundation. So I got to come correct, and that's what's pushed me to get to where I am today. Because every day I got to come correct. So when you do it every day, over years, you get to a certain space. So I appreciate them because it's, you got, sharp women like that, and that's what you want. You want sharp women that, are an asset, and we're fortunate that they're our asset, respectfully, So that's a beautiful thing, Professor. And thank you for just making sure that the fathers out there understand that daughters marry their fathers. Correct me if I'm wrong, Professor. Daughters marry their fathers.
Right. I mean, it's just one of those things. Another example for, and I'm not trying to like, ruffle feathers, but, there's a book called, I think his name is Steven Tyler. The book's called Man Up.
Mm,
And the book talks about the dynamic sometimes in certain households where, the mother, where the kid is like on the couch playing PlayStation, and the mother constantly calls the kid the man of the house,
mm,
and keeps giving these false, um, you know, I guess you say, false importance, or false authoritative like input from these kids, whereas the mother might say, if she's saying like, I can't date because my son won't approve, I can't do X, Y, and Z, but all the kid is doing is playing PlayStation. And then what happens is when that young man goes off, he's so conditioned that being a man of the house, being on the couch, is that when he actually gets involved in a relationship, he wants to do the same thing. And what happens is that, of course, the young lady would want, an equal partner. And then when she, asks about, hey, how come you don't get out and get a job? How come you don't do X, Y, and Z? He's still in this what's called Peter Pan kind of mindset, and he will resort to the nuclear option.
mm,
And and unfortunately, he would use inflammatory remarks describing the relationship, putting the blame on the woman and not on himself. So it's always being mindful about that, because he's a kid.
mm,
Kid need the the kid is not the man of the house. He's not contributing to anything.
mm,
He is he's a kid.
mm,
And it's one of those things. And I remember not too long ago, I remember uh, a young lady asked me one time that she had some issues with her son because all he wanted to do was stay in the house and play PlayStation. I thought she was talking about a teen. She was talking about a 30-year-old man.
Mm.
And I told her, you better call the sheriff and say you got a trespasser because I'm sorry, but you got a 31-year-old on your couch not contributing to anything. And I get it. Some cultures, kids stay in houses longer than others. Some people might have certain issues. But, if the kid is, for aesthetic purposes, is healthy and can actually do things without no limitations. But all they want to do is stay on the couch and be a perpetual man child, and that's a issue.
Mm.
And my whole thing was I can't do nothing with a grown man or implied grown man. That's something you need a DeLorean and go back in time and fix those issues because
Mm.
you can't uh, you can't deal with that. And what I'm getting at is just be mindful of how you uh, interact with your kids. It can be with the daughters. I knew a guy, his daughter got in trouble with the law. After she got done doing her court appearance, they threw a party like Goodfellas, and it was surreal. Didn't scold her. They like threw a party, like, oh, she did her first thing, like Goodfellas. And now I think she's been in and out of the judicial system, which is insane. And I was just like, I can't be around you people because y'all have lost your mind.
Mm.
Uh, this kid who fortunately did not do any juvenile time or anything like that. You should be disciplining her in some compassion, some way or fashion. But instead, they threw a party, celebrated, like, she got her wings.
Mm.
And, so just be mindful of how you interact with your kids and do certain things because, well as I do, tabula rasa, blank slate. They internalize a lot of that stuff. And if there's no outside elements to kind of show them an alternative,
Mm.
either they can either go right or left,
Mm.
and that's unfortunate.
Mm. And that's our role, ladies and gentlemen, as fathers, to assist in that path. So again, make sure you're connecting with Professor in more than one way. And before we get out of here, Professor, you mentioned some pretty cool things, and I want to see if there's some space or some room for people to connect with you in this capacity. But photographer, and is your work still online, or what's what? Because I've definitely followed your work as a photographer for years, and you've been very fortunate to provide services for our family. How
Mm-hmm.
is that going? And can anyone find your work online? First and foremost.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can most definitely look me up on Instagram. I do have a web page or a blog, but like I said before, um, I don't know why I haven't. Yeah, I haven't really been posting like I should gallery, but I'm usually consistent on my Instagram page, which
Right.
is my first and last name on Instagram, as well as through that I can connect you with my Facebook page as well. But my goal is to get better at my actual uh, I guess you say website, posting galleries or mini galleries and things of that nature.
No, most definitely, and we'll make sure we put those links up at least with for sure Instagram, Facebook. If you don't mind, we'll still get the blog up as well, just so people can
Hmm.
just, check out your work. And so, community, father, husband in the community, um, in corrections, workforce development, at risk youth, and then you have a creative side, photography, and going into an exhibit coming up. Which I believe was in September, underlining the theme "Strong Women," which I
Yeah.
think is a very unique theme. And so, if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about the exhibit in September? Is that public, or just what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's public. It's called Community Shutterbug, and it's just a contemporary interpretation of everything that has influenced me, or put me on my artistic track or professional track. And underlying that is basically strong women. I have certain other things in there like from the nerd culture, but for the most part, most of the pictures are celebrating strong women because that's what was in my life. So it's September 12th and it runs until November, if I remember correctly. There is an exhibit. The reception is going to be September 12th from 5:30 to 7:30. And what's going to be unique is that my mother is going to be present. She just turned 80 this year. I wasn't able to celebrate her birthday, um, this past May because she's up north and I'm down south, way down south in Florida. So she's going to be present. And so I'm going to have individuals, I'm going to have the individuals who are at the event sing happy birthday to her and probably present like cakes or something like that for her as well. So that's one thing right there I'm doing. Another thing is that I was interested in doing a novel, but then I realized my attention span is not that good to really carry on a
Mhm.
novel for like 100 pages. So I do love comic books. So I did create a script for a comic book, an anthology series, a horror kind of thing. And it's done, it's complete. And so 2026, my goal is to figure out a way to put that all together, um, and then as well as and then in 2027 I would like to do um, a black comic con in the month of February, so it's all stairs, steps, so to speak. But right now it's the exhibit, so I got my pictures printed. I just gotta frame them and get them ready. Try and get it done ahead of time. Oh, and then most importantly, one of the things I was able to do is I had a presentation on a particular character called Kotrak the Night Stalker, and it was approved for Tampa Bay Comic Con, which is one of the largest comic book events or fandom events in this area or in the Florida area. So that was recently approved, and I'll be doing a presentation for that in August. So I'm trying to diversify my stock, so to speak. That's what I always tell people. I mean, some folks, they stay in a lane and they're good at it, and that's cool. But I've always been one of those people who like to move around a lot. Not because, just because for me, life is like a buffet, and it's just one of those things, just partaking in, everything that you can do, because it's just growing up. I understand that growing up you didn't really have that representation in the fandom event, unlike today, as well as with photography. So it's just another means of artistic expression for that, and so I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. Part of the exhibit, I've got a magazine, because three of the ladies who are very instrumental as far as for the exhibit are in the magazine, and I'm going to have limited edition magazine where it's done on nice paper, printed up fine, and they're going to be there doing autographs and whatnot. So they're going to be instrumental as that too. So a lot of stuff going on right here.
That is awesome. So it sounds like we will have you on the show several times throughout the next several years, leading up to the Comic Con in February in 2027, and we can definitely elaborate on that more in the future. If again you are a business, a government agency, or a community leader, and any of these things resonate with you, the exhibit, even the comic book that's complete, and going into the next stage. I want to first of all congratulate you on your presentation being approved, and that was, I'm sorry, what was the first name? The Night Stalker, but it was Kojak. What was the name you said?
Kolchak the Night Stalker. He was a character that came out in the 70s,
Hmm.
and originally started with made for TV movies with two, and eventually became a TV series. And what's so important about that is that that series, even though it was a short run, inspired the X Files.
Hmm.
Inspired a lot of other shows, but mainly the X Files. And from the X Files, you've got all these other, different kind of supernatural conspiracy things such as Fringe and, um, I think Supernatural and a few others
Mm.
that sprang from the X Files, but its underlying thing was Kolchak the Night Stalker, and it's often overlooked. Folks don't understand it, and the writer for The Sopranos got to start, interesting enough, with Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Wow.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, it was one of those unique, uh, elements of the 70s that came and went, but it's still, again, the ripple effect is still around. And so I just wanted to do a presentation. Didn't know it was going to get approved or not, because like I said, they average their cons. I think it's something like 30, 40,000 people attend.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't think I usually the first time you get rejected. This
Mhm.
time I was accepted, and I was like, huh, okay, that's good.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So I get in for free. I hope I get in for free. If I got to pay to get in, then I guess I'm not going to be doing the presentation because the tickets ain't cheap.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow. That is awesome. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll put the link. The link should be on the screen. It's definitely in the description. Follow the professor on Instagram, Facebook. As these things unfold, I know he's going to be sharing his work, and more so again. I don't care if you're an intern and you're in the area and you want to help where you can. Please make sure you reach out to the professor um, to see where you can assist. And last thing we'll touch on before we get out of here, Professor, 2027 Comic Con. What was the motivation behind that in Florida? And is there anything that you're looking as far as first steps that need to be done?
um, the main thing is that, and I know that people have been wanting to do uh comic book conventions, especially that are kind of geared towards the black and brown outside of February. What motivates me for February, it is one of those things of sci-fi has a unique way of um, addressing various issues, as well as, again, Black Panther. Again, it's end all to be all, so to speak. But for me, what really motivates me is the fact that growing up, there was nobody looked like us in that world, and so I wanted to do something to celebrate that, as well as and offer something that's very family friendly in the month of February. It's one of those things where, yes, there's a lot of events that are going on, but kids are kids. And you can teach kids about who they are without kind of like a lecture or professorial way of approach. Kids don't want to be talked to, they want to go and enjoy themselves.
Yeah, I hear that.
Um, and it's one of those things of providing a platform where they can see people who look like them, um, and they can learn from that. Most importantly, too, as I always say, that it works twofolds. Yes, representation matters for kids, for black and brown kids, but also those kids who are not black and brown. The one cool thing I think is awesome is that when I'm in a toy aisle and I will see, say, a white family, and and the kids like, I want T'Challa, and they're like, okay, cool, good choice. Or I want, the new Captain America, or I see a kid dressed like the new Captain America running around. There's a video that came out, and it was very telling, where this little blonde hair, blue eyed girl at Disney World, she goes up to, I can't think of their name now, but the guards, the ladies who representing the guards for the Black Panther, and she's going up to these, black women, bald head, and very end, she's like, I want to be like you, I want to be strong, and so it works, and it's like, and the parents are cool with it, they're like, whatever. So it's just telling, it's giving a platform where representation works all the way around. So when they see things, they're not like going, "Oh my God, this is a black person." It's like, "Oh, okay, this is a superhero." Things like that. It just becomes the norm, and it doesn't become like not necessarily jarring, but it isn't like, oh, it shocks you.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, it shows kids, because kids by nature are, kids are kids. They don't see anything. They just love to love, and it just provides them a platform to do that. And that's my underlying motivations to provide a platform where people can just enjoy themselves and actually learn from each other in a nice, safe space.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it first. Comic-Con 2027, February in Florida. And as we get closer to those dates, we'll definitely make sure that we are doing all we can to assist. Now is the time to get connected with the professor in those areas, to include the presentation coming up that he was recently approved for Kolchak, the Night Stalker. And so that's something new to my ears as of right now. That's why it's so important to representation and history. So important. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude our time with the professor at this time. But we're definitely going to make sure he joins us in the near future. And Professor, before we officially sign off, do you have any parting words of wisdom, anything that just jumps out to your mind for us to marinate on before we leave? Or
Just enjoy life. Like I said, we're on this big blue marble together, and just embrace one another and just enjoy life. False evidence appearing real. Don't let that be the factor of allowing you, of preventing you from achieving your goals.
Hmm. And that's why 100% received, at least from me. And that's why I'm so fortunate to have, and I know my family is so fortunate for me to be around, individuals such as yourself, and just helping to provide good information so that we can be the best we can be. Ladies and gentlemen, Kalonji, thank you, Professor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Senator.
You are welcome. And again, make sure you reach out to the professor, follow his work. Reach out to me, worst case, if you can't connect with the professor, I'll get you in contact. But that concludes another great episode of Insight into Insight, all things societal. This episode was brought to you by our good friends at Intelligent Office, downtown Nashville. Click that link down there if you want to make sure that your business has the best professional representation in the Nashville area, Southeast region, because of location. And Intelligent Office has an outstanding administrative team that can help do the work for you to help you scale your business. Or if you're just starting off, you can't do it yourself, can't do it all by yourself. This is a great organization, company that has a system to help get the job done. And so we wish you the best. Professor and I are standing in agreement for your success, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, and you want to go deeper into relationship management, check out my website at www.ldhadvising.com. You can also book a relationship management session or even study relationship management yourself through my courses. I'll see you in my next episode.